Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special informational AURI Connects webinar. AURI Connects programs are hosted by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute and include our monthly series of Webinar Wednesdays and our Fields of Innovation programs. I'm Dan Scogan, Director of Government and Industry Relations for AURI and the host of the AURI Connects webinars. This program aims to actively engage all participants in the food and ag industry to improve competitiveness of producers, businesses, and entrepreneurs through ongoing, purposeful connection of resources and partners along the value chain, and increased knowledge of opportunities, technologies, and trends. This event is being recorded and is being archived. It can be found at auri.org. Today, we offer a special informational webinar entitled Federal SBIR STTR Funding for Novel Product Research and Development in the Ag Sector. We're glad you're joining us today. And remember, even though you are muted during the presentations, you can ask questions of our presenters in the Q&A portal on your screen. Today, we welcome Pat Dillon, founder and director of the Minnesota SBIR STTR Accelerator. Pat has over 30 years demonstrated knowledge, experience, and relationships to bring immediate value to science and technology-based small businesses to access federal research and development funding to research, develop, and commercialize their technologies toward new products and services. Commander Dillon served for 40 years and is a combat veteran serving 10 months in Kabul, Afghanistan, supporting operations Enduring Freedom. Pat, welcome to the program and tell us more about the Minnesota Accelerator program.
Well, thank you, Dan. Thank you for everyone that's on the call today. So as Dan said, I've been involved with the federal SBIR and STTR programs for many years. And I believe that, since Minnesota and our surrounding states, we're ag-based, and we should be getting more of the SBIR funding through the Department of Agriculture and its National Institute of Food and Agriculture. So my comments today are going to really just focus on the USDA program. However, there are 10 other federal agencies that participate in both the SBIR and the Small Business Technology Transfer programs. And so I would encourage you to kind of open up your aperture beyond the USDA, but today's focus is on just this agency. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the solicitation, and then of course the instructions that are required and the different phases and the topics and the funding and the timeline. And then towards the end of the session today, we'll answer any of your specific questions. And of course, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do in the Accelerator. So we get funding through the Small Business Administration, through the state of Minnesota, through the Department of Employment and Economic Development, and funding through the Mayo Clinic Office of Entrepreneurship and the University of Minnesota Technology Commercialization Office. And so we're at the intersection of government, industry, and academia in our quest to help Minnesota companies access SBIR and STTR funding. Our services are free and confidential. And we're also hosted by the Minnesota Technology Association. So as I said earlier, our mission is to really help Minnesota companies, whether they're startup or existing, to access SBIR and STTR funding. And you'll hear from one of our clients, Gotham Vermuri, who was successful in getting several SBIR awards over the years. But at the end of the day, this is all about commercializing novel ideas or concepts or projects that of course have strong commercial potential. And by using SBIR, STTR funding to enable that commercialization to occur. And as Dan asked earlier, about SBIR funding, this is your tax dollars that are being used to support novel research and development in small businesses for the express purpose to de-risk a technology towards commercialization. So in doing that, our work is really focused on training and educating the next generation of government grantees and contractors. We provide deep coaching and mentoring to the companies that we work with. That's really our bread and butter. And then we also provide advocacy to ensure that SBIR and STTR is actually continues on, and of course it requires a congressional approval and signing into law by the president. And the programs are currently up for an extension this year, and hopefully, that happens, and we'll be in a good position going forward to actually make the program perhaps a permanent program in the future. The programs themselves have been around for 40 years and 30 years respectively. There's a lot of history and a lot of impact that's been a result of SBIR funding in this country, at the tune of about $50 billion over those 40 years. That's resulted in some really significant economic impact and job growth and creation of wealth. So here are some of the companies that have been funded by the USDA SBIR program, and many of these I've worked with over the years. And this is again, one of those, it's a smaller agency, but it's really impactful funding to support those ag related types of projects that have commercial potential. So just a quick overview of the USDA NIFA SBIR program, and you can obviously see the bullets items here. But at the end of the day, we're really supporting scientific, technical R&D in a small business with the express purpose to move something along the commercialization pathway towards those market opportunities that exist not only domestically, but internationally. And so you can kind of think of SBIR funding as seed funding to de-risk a technology that has strong commercial potential. And for many small businesses, or even startups for that matter, they simply don't have these kinds of funds available to help support that R&D effort. And this is where the SBIR program is really important to not only startups, but the existing small businesses, that with novel ideas that wouldn't otherwise be commercialized. They just simply don't have the R&D funds to do it. So it's really important funding for many companies. So you probably are wondering, well, why doesn't the USDA participate in the STTR program? And well, because it doesn't meet the threshold required for that program. So USDA only participates in the SBIR program. And when you look at SBIR, you can partner with other organizations to help support your R&D effort. And in phase one, you can outsource up to 1/3 of the work to other entities. And in phase two, it's up to 50%. And the key element to remember about the SBIR program, and this will be true for all agencies, but the primary employment of that principal investigator or that project director needs to be with the small business at the time of award and during the conduct of the research. And many times when we interact with companies that are pursuing SBIR funding, this is a critical question that we have to answer early on in the process. And maybe sometimes you don't have someone internally that can meet those requirements or have the background or the expertise or the credentials to lead a research effort. And this is where you look at other options and other agencies to maybe support that project. So we spend a lot of time thinking about who's going to be the PI for a project. And of course, Gotham has been a PI on its own projects. This is one of those key elements that we really look at very closely. So when you think about SBIR funding, I don't want you to think about it as being kind of a separate, distinct aspect of your business. It really needs to be a part of your overall business plan. It needs to align with your business goals and objectives. And you can see here from the slide that, we're looking at, kind of this continuum of where SBIR or STTR funding fits within the pathway for a business, and where SBIR funding really is a good fit with the proof of concept and the R&D that needs to be done to help support that development of that new product or service that you intend to provide to the marketplace at some time in the future. And I also want to say that SBIR funding is just one source of funding that's going to be leveraged to help support that effort. So don't think of SBIR as solving all your financing needs for this new product development effort. You need to be thinking about other ways of how you're going to capitalize the company to and also support the growth of that project. Now, one thing that I want to make sure is very clear, this is not a loan. This is a federal grant that's offered through USDA. Some other agencies offer contracts, but this is a grant. So it's what we call non-dilutive capital. And it's funding that's provided to you to assist you in de-risking that technology towards the commercialization pathway. You retain the IP and the technical rights, data rights that come along with that project as a part of not only through the Bayh-Dole Act, which our universities fall under the Bayh-Dole Act, as well as small businesses. And on the SBIR.gov website, there's a document called the SBIR Policy Directive. And this is essentially a narrative description of the congressional legislation that established the SBIR and STTR programs. And I would say that, I encourage our companies to read through that document and to at least be aware of it, because it is really the rules of the road for the agencies, but that also, of course, impacts the small business. And as I, alluded to earlier, that, this is a source of funding that can be leveraged through other sources of funding, either from investors or partners. And then in Minnesota, we have, if you're a first-time SBIR or STTR award winner, you can leverage the Launch Minnesota matching grant program that's available. And this is on a sliding fee based on the level of the federal award. This is really important money because it helps to support some of those costs that are not allowable under a federal SBIR or STTR grant or contract. So the USDA issues one solicitation a year under this SBIR program. And you have the link there, and I would encourage you to, of course, download this document and read through it many, many times. There's a lot of information in this document. But the agency is looking for applications and the deadline is October 6th. So why we decided, Jen and Nan and I decided that we should have this webinar in April is to give any of you enough time to actually prepare and submit an application to the USDA. And if you start now, I would say by October, you should have a very solid phase 1 proposal that you can submit to the USDA for consideration. And the project that you're going to propose is going to be either for $125,000 or $175,000, depending upon the topic. And of course, in the solicitation, they describe the topics, how much funding is available, et cetera. And I'll actually have an example here in the slide deck that will give you some sense of what to look for. For any project that you propose, it's going to be for 8 months. And those projects would start sometime in July of 2023. And then of course go out from July. So the success rate with USDA, I would say between maybe 15% and 20% of the phase 1 applications are selected for an award. They don't really have a big budget, but again, you know, it's looking at what your project is, and if this amount of funding can help de-risk maybe one aspect of your project, then I would really strongly encourage you to consider it. So the proposal itself is actually just 17 pages, and it's 1.5 spaced written pages that includes figures and tables and graphics. And this is the outline. And I'm not certainly going to go through those things today. I mean, in our follow-on session, we will dive a little deeper into each one of these categories. But this is basically the essence of the phase 1 proposal to USDA. And I encourage people to, you know, look at, of course, the requirements and then create their own outline under each one of these sections so that they stay on target and they, you know, write and prepare an application that flows well, that reads well, that demonstrates success, hopefully, and you've got a good team in place to actually carry out the research that you're proposing to do. So budgets. So when we look at SBIR budgets, we're always looking at direct costs, those costs that are directly related to the scope of work that you're proposing to do. We also look at the indirect cost rate that's allowed under a federal grant, which in this case with USDA, if you do not have a federally negotiated rate, which most first-time applicants or new companies to the programs, you know, in this case with USDA, they only allow what they call a 10% de minimis rate. And that indirect cost funding is there to support, you know, expenses that you incur as a business that are not directly related to the project. Other agencies have higher indirect cost rates that they allow. So, but with USDA, it's just at 10%. They also offer a profit or fee. I always think of this as your profit margin on the phase 1 project. And so in this case here with USDA, it's 7%. And then the technical and business assistance. This is additional monies that Congress authorized a few years ago, and it provides up to $6,500 per phase 1 for you to hire an outside vendor to support commercialization types of activities. And those activities are normally, they are not allowed expenses as a direct cost or as an indirect cost. So this is why this funding is really important to help, especially first-time winners, you know, really understand their market and their customers, and to really help support that commercialization pathway and to support the phase 2 proposal, which requires a deeper commercialization plan. So this is really important funding. So when you add up all the funding that's possible with a phase 1, you have, depending upon the topic, you have either $131,500 or $181,300. Or it should be 500, I'm sorry. Anyway, so this is really, really important, you know, to keep this in mind as you're sort of structuring your scope of work, and how much has to be done by the small business and how much can be outsourced. And so, as I said earlier, you know, 2/3 of the work has to be done by the small business and 1/3 can be subcontracted out to other entities. And this, you know, when I think about the budget, the scope of work, and then how work can be divided, you know, I keep these things in mind as we're moving forward towards really defining what that scope of work is and what's going to be done in the company and what's going to be outsourced to other entities. We always want to make sure we're in compliance with these percentages. So here's just an example of one of the topics that's within the USDA. And these are all consistent, pretty much, they have the main topic area. In this case here, it's rural and community development, and they provide a point of contact that someone you can call and actually talk about your proposed project. And then they provide a description of what the topic is about. And it's very broad, as you can see. And then they have other category, other information here. And so in this case here, this is a topic where they're only going to allow up to 125,000 or a max of 131,500 with TABA. So when you're structuring your project around this topic, you're going to have to keep those details in mind. Here are some of the other priorities within this topic. And so again, you can see how broad they are. And this is why, when we have granting agencies and their topics, I always say they have the money and the mission. And you have the ideas, you have the concepts of the opportunities that you see. And so you're just trying to match your project with the agency with the money and the mission. And I can give an example of where this past year I worked with a company on a project that was health related, and it was not successful with the National Science Foundation, and it wasn't successful with the National Institutes of Health. And I suggested to the CEO of the company, I said, I think you could take this project and submit it to the USDA because they care about rural healthcare and so forth. And it was selected for funding. So even though it was a much lower dollar amount than what she certainly wanted, but it's still, we got part of the project funded, and that's was a really good thing. And she would have never thought about targeting the USDA, but when you know what the topics are with all these agencies, and there are very many topics, it's like know where to go to find it and how to build a case to request funding. So with this particular topic of rural and community development, I pulled out the awards that were made in 2020, which is the most current award data that's available. And you can kind of see the different topic areas here. And of course, you can actually look at this information on the NIFA SBIR homepage, where they list out all the awardees and the abstracts associated with each of these projects, and all the other topics that are available. But this is just simply an example. So what do you do to get started here in Minnesota? And if you're in other states, I would suggest that you go to SBIR.gov and look for your local resource for your state. But here in Minnesota, we want companies to apply to our accelerator. It's free and it's confidential. We will ask you 5 questions that deal with the business, the technical, and the team. And those questions are actually the same questions that the National Science Foundation asks potential applicants to receive an invitation to actually submit a proposal to them. The NSF or the USDA phase 1 proposal requires a market opportunity section to be provided as part of that phase 1 proposal. And these questions that you answer as a part of our accelerator application provide insights to us to determine whether or not you're going to be strong enough to, or have enough data to support that market opportunity section in the phase 1 proposal. And then after you're approved to be in the accelerator, we have weekly or bi-weekly meetings with you one-on-one that are virtual, and it's basically to keep you on track and allow you to ask questions and keep you moving forward towards that October submission date. And then I would say, get familiar with the NIFA solicitation and the instructions, and I'm a big proponent of using Gantt charts to kind of lay out what is the foundation for the project, and so that you're keeping not only time and effort aligned with the proposed budget. And I'll end with this. There are many steps in the process, and this is a team effort, and we are simply your SBIR Sherpa. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Good information. Boy, there was a lot to absorb there, but we'll come back to you with maybe some follow-up questions just for some clarity on a few of those points that you made.
Absolutely.
But I do appreciate all the information that was in there. So how do we take what we just heard and translate that into the real world? Well, next we're going to be welcoming Dr. Gautam Vemuri. Gautam is an entrepreneur with a track record of 2 successful exits. His expertise is in bridging marketing needs with technology and innovation. Gautam started his career as a professor, first at Chalmers University in Sweden, and then later at Stanford University. He founded a renewable chemicals company that developed the technology to produce acrylics and bioplastics, which he sold in 2019. His next venture focuses on high-performance dietary ingredients, which is scheduled to go into production this fall. Gautam, welcome to today's webinar.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here. So I don't have any slides, but I will be open for any questions, and I just wanted to share a couple of things. And I have worked with AURI in the past, and I've worked with Pat Dillon in the past, and they have been incredibly supportive. And so one thing that I can start off by is by saying that you're certainly not alone in this journey. So this is a good segue for me to pick up on where Pat left off, saying that it's a teamwork, and Pat and her team are certainly available for the effort. So what I found based on my experience with SBIRs is that there are three critical things that they look at. First is that, is it a technology? So is it that actually solves a societal problem? So meaning that this is something that cannot be developed overnight, and they are very, very clear on that. So they look for technology that is not an extension of existing products or existing ideas, but they look for ideas, they look for innovation that truly breaks new ground. So, and not technology just for the sake of R&D, not just a research project, but they are looking for innovation. So does it really solve a societal problem? So that is the key. And just by the definition of innovation, this is not an overnight endeavor. So this, if this is something that you wish to pursue, all I can say is that you better be prepared for a long haul. So this is not one of those new ideas for like a new doorknob that you conceive of an idea and 3 months later shows up on a Walmart shelf. So this is something that you pursue for many, many years at a stretch, and hopefully at the end of the long and arduous journey, you do see the a very bright light at the end of that journey. So that's something that I've learned along the way. And the second thing is that the common theme among the other companies and who are in the same boat as I was, winning an SBIR award and working with the support system that we have available, is that the business has to be well-rounded. So absolutely, technology is necessary, but that's not sufficient. So what I mean by that is that you always need to identify what is your weakest link. And for the longest time, our weakest link has been our business development and our financial infrastructure. So we started fixing that up, and I'm in a pretty good spot right now to say that we are now transitioning from a startup company into a full-fledged corporation that is actually doing business in the commercial world. So and that's something, and I don't mean to say that there's that weakest link that is constant all the way through the journey, and that weakest link that I talked about keeps changing from time to time. And so it's the burden of the founder, of the CEO, to identify what that weakest link is at that given point of time and start addressing that. So, and that's what I mean by the business being well-rounded. And certainly the SBIR looks at it. These guys who review SBIR proposals, they are seasoned entrepreneurs themselves. They have that technical depth. They have that business acumen. So they can easily smell a fake proposal from far away. So, I mean, all these things need to be in place before you can submit your proposal. And that's one of the things that I found the support system to be extremely helpful, and I relied on that support system a lot. So Pat and her team, I mean, she is very, very well connected. So if you were to have an idea, and the best person that you could talk to is Pat. So she could certainly help you package your idea into a very competitive, very strong proposal, meeting the ever-changing guidelines that the SBIR has. So she's always on top of her game. So I've been incredibly lucky to work with her. So, and then I also mentioned that during this journey that over the past 5-6 years, I have also been able to get incredible amount of help from AURI. So we needed a lot of testing. We needed a lot of analysis. I don't come from an ag background, so I needed that market intelligence. I needed that almost boots on the ground intelligence, and that would have been impossible for me to reach out and get on my own. So I was able to tap into the network and resources that AURI had and has to be able to get that information quickly. And I was, in fact, also able to filter out what was the information that I really needed and discuss that with AURI, and that formed the basis for the business side of our company. So yeah, and then the third thing that I wanted to point out is that many of the other companies in the same boat as I am, they agree with me in saying that, when they hear people say that, oh, raising money is hard, I disagree. I mean, if you were to have a good idea, solid technical background, and something that does not violate laws of nature and has a sound scientific rationale and decent business plan and very clearly addresses the need, then I would say you would have a pretty good chance of winning the award. And where I find this to be extremely helpful is that SBIR awards are non-dilutive. And so what that means is that because they are non-dilutive, they are really, really truly a grant without taking any equity. So that allowed us to develop the foundational technology to allow us to develop the science in the lab. And where that came in handy was that using that foundational technology and the basic, very, very absolute basic result, we were able to protect our IP. And as soon as we had our intellectual property protected, then we were able to go out and talk to some of the other bigger companies, and that attracted their attention, and they're forced to work with us because we have a pretty solid IP protection. So that is one thing where I found SBIR funding to be extremely helpful. So yeah, so anyway, so that was just my take that, raising money is not hard. You have a good technology, clearly show that you can address a problem that that exists, and that you're actually are a full business, well-rounded business. So this is something that I have shared many times with people, and so entrepreneurship is never a part-time endeavor. It's a total full-time effort, and you do need to be able to get into that hustle. And so somehow these SBIR reviewers can smell that from far away, and they sense that, and they want to make sure that they are there to protect the taxpayers' money. So that's their job. So, and they do a pretty good job at that. So yeah, anyway, so it's I'm going to stop at that point, and I don't know, Dan, if you want me to answer any questions, or if you want me to address questions later on.
Gotham, I think we'll have you take some questions later on if there are any for you, but appreciate the update. I think probably will be thinking about that entrepreneur in residence program that you were involved in, and just maybe talk a little bit more about that, because Luca is going to talk more about that in our next segment. But thank you, Gotham, for that information.
I would love that.
Next, we are going to ask Luca Zullo to share how AURI's Assistance and Entrepreneur in Residence program might work for you, an entrepreneur. Luca is the Senior Director of Science and Technology at AURI. Now, in the past, he has worked in corporate R&D on novel agricultural commodity transformation processes, emphasizing biofuels development and renewable energy and plant operations. He led a group that developed multiple domestic and international projects in anaerobic digestion, biomass utilization, and carbon intensity reduction. He's also worked with several early stage companies, leading or supporting the transition to commercialization from early stage R&D. Luca, welcome, and please share more about how AURI can help and what Entrepreneur in Residence program is really all about.
Thank you. So I'll talk briefly about the Entrepreneur in Residence program, which is a program that AURI had already in places for a few years, but we have in the last several months, we have retooled it and coming up with a new structure for it, which I think is going to be more conducive to help entrepreneurship in our space. So what is the Entrepreneur in Residence program? Well, we think is materially different than conventional commercialization support programs that AURI does, because unlike these other program provides direct access to AURI labs and facility for the entrepreneur. So we certainly already do work will support third-party activities, but in this case will be the entrepreneur itself or a representative that will actually do the work at our facilities. And because of that, it's really targeted to individual entrepreneurs or very small companies. The goal here is to allow those individuals or those small entities to leverage our facility to address a special task. And that means accessing equipment that would be very difficult for them to have, especially at the early stage when an idea still has to be proven. Provides complete embedding of the entrepreneur within AURI. So for the period of the residency, the entrepreneur will be pretty much treated like an AURI staff member. Is about short, critical, and focused efforts. We see 6 to 9 months with well-defined objective and matrix. And we believe that under certain circumstances, the value of this contribution is something that the entrepreneur can use to leverage other grants or to be put as a part of other grants. And we see a monetary value that could be also considered as an in-kind contribution. And as I said, the goal here is identify areas where someone says, well, if I had this piece of equipment, I can test the specific ideas. If we have that equipment, we can discuss how we can make that equipment available. And of course, with it, the support that comes with it. So the commitment we provide to an entrepreneur in residence is to have access to lab facilities and equipment with associated staff support. The unapproved, unaccepted ER will have a sponsor, which is going to be a senior member of the leadership team of AURI, and a mentor, which is a staff member. We provide also alongside with that general commercialization and business support and connectivity, as we do for most of our projects. Material, equipment, consumable, and utilities appropriate for agreed work is all coming from our budget. And most important, any generated IP belongs to the entrepreneur in residence. If appropriate, also, and this is a big news compared to what we did in the past, we will provide a stipend to offset living expenses in the vicinity of the chosen laboratory. We live in a big state, and we realize that sometimes not everyone is in an easy driving distance from some of our labs, and if that is appropriate, we provide some stipend to offset the cost, say, of renting a small apartment in Marshall or in or close to Waseca, where the work is done for the period of the project. So what is the commitment we ask? Well, we ask the commitment to spend time at the chosen AURI facilities. We'll open it as obviously there's an opportunity cost for AURI. As we provide access to a specific project, we might not provide access to another project. So we'll ask commitment to actually use the time, to adhere to a mutually agreed work plan, and to be accountable to sponsor a mentor. And also, lastly, we ask, while the IP belongs to the entrepreneur, we'll ask a recognition of the AURI contribution, which might include things like participating in seminars like today's, to the extent might be appropriate having the name of, if AURI helps with an invention, to have the relevant AURI personnel recognized in the patent application, or the assignment is not remains to the inventor and to the EAR, and this type of public acknowledgement of the work, of the contribution of AURI. So what is the element of initial proposal? Since AURI covers so many potential areas, we're not going to be very prescriptive at the on how to start. Really, what we ask is that to provide what someone would like to do, and provide in these three elements: what is the idea, what the needs to address, the potential impact from a commercial perspective, synergy with other activities and grants, what equipment you need that AURI might have, what support you need as the entrepreneur needs plans to do this work, what are the metrics of success, and then when one would like to start, what is the length. Once we have this element, we'll start a process there. So basically, this is an open submission. There is no deadline or anything. Obviously, we're gonna be limited in the number of applications we have executed at any time. We might accept that says that we are not available to do this work until a certain time, but we'll accept proposal at any time. We'll do a prompt review. As I said, because of our internal constraints, how to and when accommodate a project is to complete it to our discretion. And then we'll have an internal assessment. We're going to look at the compliance with the elements of the program, the alignment with the AURI goals, what internal cost, what opportunity we see. And if we think that this is positive, then we'll start a review, which will plan to be relatively short between the entrepreneur and the relevant staff, which will basically define in detail the scope of work, the budget, technical merit, chances of success, timeline, and so forth. And that will eventually lead to a AURI project, and we basically create basically this as a normal AURI project. So the program is active now. We still haven't launched a web page about it, but we accept questions, proposals, and ideas now. And here is the email address, request@auri.org. And that is basically in a nutshell what the entrepreneurial residency is. Is another way to help entrepreneurs, people like Gautam, to test their idea, leveraging equipment that we have, and that sometimes might be difficult to access, especially when you might want to do a one-off validation of a proof of concept. We have an equipment list anyone interested can send an email, and I can reply with what the equipment list, the equipment that is available is. And that's later will be on the webpage as soon as we launch it, which I hope will happen in the next few weeks. And this is it from me at this time.
All right. Thank you very much, Luca. And that's
you.
going to get us to our Q&A part of the day. So I know we've got some entrepreneurs, some people who are thinking about an innovative idea. We've thrown a lot at you today, the SBIR, the Entrepreneur in Residence program, and there may be some questions. You can write your written questions into the Q&A portal if you're participating today. I'm going to go back to Gotham and just have him talk just a little more deeply about that Entrepreneur in Residence program and what it meant to you to stand up your project when you needed that desktop, that space to prove out some things. Gotham, maybe you can just share a little bit more about how important it was that Entrepreneur in Residence program was available to you as you moved through your process.
Absolutely, Dan. So yeah, so I should begin. I live in the metro area where lab space is premium, and also this was back in the time when I wasn't sure if the whole idea was going to be even successful or not, and so there was a lot of uncertainty. And at that point, you know, it was a chicken and egg situation. So I was willing to put more money into the company if there was some signs of success, telltale signs of success. And for me to be able to get to that telltale signs of success, I needed to put money. So it was just that vicious cycle. And that was when I came across AURI. And and that was the whole, the birth of that Entrepreneur in Residence program. So what happened with me was that AURI offered me lab space, which was premium commodity in the metro. And what was even more important than just a workbench was access to all the talent. I was talking about the business information, the market intelligence, and so on. And I also, above all, had access to all the facilities that Luca had referred to. So these were the facilities that there was no way that a small company could afford by any means. So that was, to me, was the game changer. So we had access to some pretty expensive instrumentation, analytical instrumentation, process equipment, and most importantly, we had access to very talented scientists who were able to work on that instruments and provide me with the information. And I took that information, I processed it, and combined that with the market reports and everything else. And that was the foundation for me to go to the SBIR agencies, the USDA and the NSF, and told them, look, this is what we did. These are the results that we got. And so they look promising. There's certainly the amount of risk, but we made a start. So we want to get some funding to get to the next level. And that was mainly our selling point. So that was a long story, but coming back to your question, Dan, so that's how the Entrepreneur in Residence program at AURI helped me and my company get started. At that point, it was just me, one man army doing all sorts of things. And so having that infrastructure, facilities, and that in-house knowledge was I would say very pivotal for me to be successful.
Very good. Pat, we have a question for you from one of our participants today. In SBIR grant, can the project pay compensation to the employees for doing some work? If yes, what are the limits as a % of the grant?
Well, it is definitely something that's covered by the grant. You have to have somebody, actually doing the work. So those salaries and wages of the people that are actually going to be carrying out the research is covered by the grant. So of course you have to think about the percentage of effort that that person or persons are going to contribute to the project and keeping within in the budget and all the other expenses that might come along with actually doing that project. But yes, of course, I mean, how else is the research going to get done if you don't have people doing it?
Pat, let me ask you, you talked about the phase one, of course, in your presentation. Does my project need to be phased? And if I am awarded a grant in phase one, am I more likely to get a grant in phase two?
Well, you have, for USDA, you have to have a phase one award and have successful outcomes from the research that you've proposed to allow you to continue on to submit a proposal for phase two, which is up to $600,000 for a 2-year research effort. So when you're thinking about scoping out a project, you might have your big vision, but yet, we have to segment. If we're going to focus on USDA, we have to take a portion of that big vision and just think about how does it fit within that phase one funding and timeline that's associated with USDA, and really just focus on that. But the whole goal is to actually transition from phase one to phase two, and it's a very competitive program, and this is why it's really, I think it's really important for companies to be thinking about having a multidisciplinary approach towards solving the problems or advancing the technology for a given opportunity, and to engage more people or organizations that can help them do that. And so, with SBIR, I mean, we're always, thinking about, okay, 2/3 of the work has to be done by the small business, but then that 1/3, who else am I going to engage? Whether it be a consultant or another company or an academic institution that's going to help me do this work that I'm proposing to do, because it's allowed, number one, but it helps strengthen the entire technical team. And it is something that, of course, is covered as part of the grant, or, you're going to build it into your budget, keeping in mind that you can only ask for so much, for phase one.
But that's, even though it's may be intimidating to begin the process, that's where you and your staff can kind of take some of that intimidation out of it by kind of helping us understand what we're applying for. Oh,
absolutely. I've done it hundreds and hundreds of times. As I often say, keep people out of the ditches.
That's a good way to put it.
Or keep you on the yellow brick road to the Emerald City. Or the other thing that I just wrote today, we're your SBIR Sherpa on your SBIR journey. It's a journey. It's not a destination. I mean, Gotham and I were talking about how long we've been working together, and it was what, 2015? That when we got connected,
2016.
2016. So I have this is a journey. This is long-term relationships that we have with our clients, and because navigating the federal R&D arena is complex, it's complicated, it's frustrating. Well, yeah, a lot of things that are frustrating, not just the federal grant process, but it is really, it's not something you learn overnight. And so when I think about, articulating, well, what is SBIR? What does it mean to a small business? It's like, here's a pot of money, we send all this money to Washington. So what do we do to get it back? We write really good research proposals that get funded. And we bring it back to Minnesota, or we bring it back to our company to help support what we want to do as a business, because there's no other source of funding sometimes that's available, because it's either too early, there's of course no maybe an investor isn't willing to fund that high risk, high payoff research, or, you know, certainly a bank isn't going to do that, you know, so then it's like, well, where does this money come from? And then when I think about how does SBIR, you know, for small businesses compare to other federal R&D programs that exist? Well, academic institutions, where do they get most of their R&D funding from? Or it's from federal agencies. So here we are just with SBIR, one little slice of the pie that's set aside just for small businesses. You're not competing with the big companies or the academic institutions for those dollars. These dollars are set aside just for small business, and you're competing with other small businesses all across the country that have novel ideas or concepts, that understand what's that commercial opportunity that exists in the future.
Mm-hmm.
If this is everything that I'm doing today, I'm going to be retired by the time it's commercialized.
But okay, very good. We got a couple more questions that have come in, and I've got one more on my tablet before we get wrapping things up here this afternoon. If the PI needs to be 50% employed by the small business, can all of that salary be put into the grant?
If the budget allows for it. So the primary employment, yeah, it has to be 51% or more, but that doesn't mean that that person is probably going to spend 50% of their time, and they may spend 50% of their time on the project, but they may not. But you know, this is one of the things that we talk about, you know, the role of the PI for this project. But then my take is always to be thinking about, how do we fill the pipeline of projects coming through for this company? Because I've never met an entrepreneur or business with one idea. So it's like, how do we build this pipeline? How do we fill the pipeline with other opportunities? Well, if you have this star person who can serve as the PI, and if you have them totally dedicated to just one project and 80% or 90% of their time is on that one project, that's going to prevent them from doing other projects and for other opportunities. So this is where I say, you know, if you have a star employee that meets those credentials and requirements for a PI, then think about what that whole funding stream might look like for the 18 months. You know, we're going to be looking at other funding opportunities and other applications. Okay, so for this project, you're going to spend maybe 25% of your time. For this project, you're going to spend 25% of your time. This project, you're probably going to spend 30% of your time on that one. And then you're going to have like 10% or 20% for other things that they're going to do that are not related to the R&D that's being done.
So we've got somebody that's, I think, filling out an application on the fly here as they watch the webinar. So with a mechanical engineering project, crop handling, phase 1 would be a prototype. Phase 2 would be an actual process line. Does that sound right?
You got to get earlier in the process. So what I tell people is, so we use this continuum it's called a technology readiness level, and it's basic research is 1, and then 9 is commercialization. And so when we're looking at SBIR projects, we're looking more at the 2-3 stage. So what has to be research to prove technical feasibility? And that's a really broad term to describe, because it's very unique to each project. So, but this is really the focus of phase 1. What is the technical feasibility of whatever we're proposing? And then phase 2 is more the prototype development that exists. So you always got to match the scope of work with how much funding do I have? I mean, $125,000 is not a lot of money to do a lot for 8 months. So this is where I'm always being very strategic, and when we have our discussions, because so this is USDA, but maybe there's other opportunities with other agencies. And like Gotham, he's been successful with NSF, he's been successful with DOE, and he's been successful with USDA.
And I see I missed a question earlier. Do I need a SAMS number and be registered at grants.gov to apply for an SBIR grant?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And that was one of the conversations that we would have in the second webinar that we're going to do, is to get more into the weeds of what is actually required to actually submit a proposal. And those registrations can take, 4 to 6 weeks to get done. And the system for award management is the bottleneck. Yeah, and we help companies with those registrations.
I see we had a, go ahead. Yeah, I see we had a follow-up question on the production piece, but maybe you did put your website in the chat, did you, Pat? Maybe they could follow up that way, because I wanted to go back to Gotham real quickly as we close up shop here today. Just to be clear, if people are running to the email address to get into the the Entrepreneur in Residence program, you need to be qualified to be in a lab, and AURI is going to be monitoring your work and making sure that you should be in the lab. Isn't that right, Luca? I mean, we don't want people thinking this is a place to just kind of go and it's not a think tank area.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I think there's going to be some level of training needed, and obviously qualification. We'll also ask some level of insurance for obvious reasons. So that, I haven't entered in those level of details. But as I said, the whole goal is, and the expectation is that the person anyway has the science background, the technical background to do the work with some support. But definitely those are going to be requirement. And also I added that it's really focused towards small single entrepreneurs or extremely small company. What I would say is that we expect the entities to be involved in the entrepreneurial residence program to be basically pre-revenue entities. Now, we are thinking about programs to provide this type of embedded service for larger entities, but this will be handled through a type of different program where we can discuss about type of embedding of research, and we are working on programs like that, but will be a bit different for companies that are post-revenue.
Very good. I want to leave it there for today because we do plan to have a series on this topic, and we're going to save some stuff for May, and hope you come back and join us again. I want to thank Pat, Gotham, and Luca for participating today. And as I mentioned, AURI SBIR STTR is planning a follow-up webinar in May. So keep looking for more information at auri.org. And you can always learn more about other work that AURI is involved with by going online on our website. That is auri.org. And thank you for joining us today for this informational webinar.